when crime is down under Joe Biden and crime was up under Donald Trump. Now, I don't know how often that gets reported on this network, so if you're watching this at home, do yourself a favor and look up the data.
Well, we invite that.
Great.
Well, he sent it back to the states, to be fair.
Let's be very clear. He is proud of the fact that he demolished the national right to choose in this country, period. He didn't keep his promise of 6% economic growth. He didn't keep his promise to drain the swamp.
He did have a pandemic to deal with.
But even before the pandemic, even before the pandemic, America went into a manufacturing recession. Also, as you know, the Republican Party continues to be interested in a national abortion ban.
Which he's disavowed completely.
Yeah, he's disavowed a lot of things. I don't believe him. Because he lies all the time.
Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg has always been one of the Democratic Party's most effective communicators, debaters, and rhetoricians. And for some reason, the Fox Propaganda Network yet again invited him on for another rematch on today's Sunday morning shows, and it quickly became apparent that it would not go well for their MAGA talking points. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have several clips to talk about in this video. Pete Buttigieg has always been one of the best, there's no question. But as I've noted in previous recent videos about Buttigieg, his rhetoric has gotten sharper, he's gotten edgier, he's gotten more assertive in the conversations. He's always been more than capable of outfoxing and outmaneuvering any Fox host or Fox pundit he encounters. But now that he's one of the most powerful people in the country as a member of President Biden's cabinet, he tends to take control of interviews much more quickly than he used to, and I love it. So he puts on a masterclass performance here, and I can't wait to dive into it. And we're going to start with this clip right here.
Affect them the most, whether we're talking about choice and her stance on defending a woman's right to choose versus Donald Trump, who eliminated a right to choose in this country.
Well, he sent it back to the states, to be fair.
Let's be very clear. He is proud of the fact that he demolished the national right to choose in this country, period.
But there are states that are figuring this out. I mean, there are some that are, it's nearly impossible, a 6-week ban or less. But there are others, there are states in this country that allow no restrictions up until the due date of a child.
There was a national right to choose in this country, law of the land, for 50 years, which the vast majority of Americans believed was the right thing to do. But Donald Trump made a promise when he was a candidate, one of the few promises he actually kept, by the way. He didn't keep his promise of 6% economic growth. He didn't keep his promise to drain the swamp.
He did have a pandemic to deal with.
But even before the pandemic, America went into a manufacturing recession, which really hurt places like where I come from in the industrial Midwest. But anyway, my point is, he broke his promise for that kind of economic growth. He broke his promise to pass an infrastructure bill, right? He said he would do that. He failed to do it. The Biden-Harris administration got it done. He even broke his promise to that January 6th mob when he said, I will be at your side when you march down to the Capitol. But he actually did keep two promises. He kept his promise to destroy the right to choose in this country, and he kept his promise on tax cuts for the rich. And if you want to know what a second Trump term would be like, I would start by looking at those rare promises that he actually managed to keep.
He did say that he wanted to get rid of Roe v. Wade, but again, send it to the states where they are hashing this out
empower the states to eliminate women's access to abortion. And also, as you know, the Republican Party continues to be interested in a national abortion ban.
Which he's disavowed completely.
Yeah, he's disavowed a lot of things. I don't believe him. Because he lies all the time.
You think that his pledge that he would not pass a national ban is one that
it's one that's going to go down with most of the promises that he's made and broken.
So, guys, again, if you've tracked Pete Buttigieg's appearance on the Fox Propaganda Network, you can see a marked increase in the rhetorical aggression, the sharpness, he's still patient. He is still brushed up on the facts, but he's like, you know what? I've been super magnanimous with you all. I'm not going to allow you to interrupt with questions. I'm going to correct you, even if you're a polite interviewer. And I love it. The fact that he refused to let her reframe or pre-frame the questions. When she tried to excuse Trump's poor economic performance when he was president on the pandemic. He's like, no. Trump failed economically even prior to the pandemic. He broke his promise. And I love the fact, because this is something, it's almost like he has liked and subscribed to Pondering Politics, which I recommend that you do as well, because this is something else I point out that, Trump is a pathological liar. He's a malignant narcissist. He has broken promises and failed to keep his word. And then the few times that he has kept his word, right, it's for the worst possible thing. So he kept his word by revoking Roe v. Wade. And I love the fact that he refuses, again, to concede to this, this idea that it's some sort of moderate policy proposal. He's like, no, What Democrats want is overwhelmingly popular. What Republicans want is wildly unpopular. What Donald Trump did is something that conflicts with the vast majority of Americans' wishes, including in deep red states. I love the fact he refused to allow her to sanitize and launder the terrible things that Donald Trump has done. And he's like, listen, the only time that this man can be reliably, trusted to keep his promises are in the very worst possible situation. So I just absolutely love the fact that he didn't allow any sort of sanitization of Trump's record and character in that clip. But we've got another one as well.
Nominee.
And was she aware of how he was doing?
We're all aware of how he's doing. Our country has watched our president lead. And yes, we've also seen the fact that he's 10 years older than he was 10 years ago. But unlike Republicans, right, who in Trump's personality cult will take a look at Donald Trump and say he's perfectly fine, even though he seemed unable to tell the difference between Nikki Haley and Nancy Pelosi, even though he's rambling about electrocuting sharks and Hannibal Lecter, even though he is clearly older and stranger than he was when America first got to know him. They say he's strong as an ox, leaps tall buildings in a single bound.
Well,
we don't have that kind of warped reality on our side.
Well,
on the contrary, the president confronted that reality in what must have been one of the most difficult decisions for an American president to make ever. And he did something that I don't think Donald Trump could even conceive of doing, which is putting his own interests aside for the country.
Well, voters have said that they are much like
nominee.
Love that. Again, you see it. He's not mincing words anymore, and he's not allowing her to interrupt and again try to pre-frame the issue. The fact of the matter is MAGA should be referred to as a cult. It's something that we do here on this channel. I love the fact that more and more prominent Democratic politicians are just dropping all pretense. And they're like, you know what? I'm fed up of pretending that MAGA is this normal wing of American politics. Normalizing MAGA has only made it more dangerous and has only, jeopardized the health of our democracy. So enough of that. The fact of the matter is that MAGA behaves like a cult and Donald Trump behaves like a cult leader. He even quotes Superman, that MAGA pretends that Trump is, effectively Superman. He can leap tall buildings in a single bound, outrun locomotives. These are phrases used to describe Superman, right? But you see it all the time. You see it that they have this enormously strange notion that Donald Trump is the embodiment of perfect spiritual, mental, and physical health. That should be mocked and derided and called out. Love this energy from Pete Buttigieg. This clip I'm about to show you is particularly long. It's about 3 minutes. So we're going to play it, unpack it together.
McConnell was for it. The head of the CBP union was for it. And then Trump swooped in to kill it. Not because he thought it was bad policy, but because he didn't want that issue to get better, because if it got worse, it would be better for him politically.
And I'll ask Senator Johnson about that, because there were a number of provisions that Republicans, including Mitch McConnell, ended up in the final product, felt that there was something they could not vote for there, and they could not move forward.
Come on, we know why they didn't move forward. They moved forward because Donald Trump swooped in. He said, I don't want Joe Biden to get a win. They felt many of them that it was a flawed piece of legislation that had too many loopholes and other things they couldn't support. This is how Washington Post, what happened.
This is how they described the border situation. Illegal border crossing soared in the months after Biden took office and immediately rolled back many Trump-era restrictions. They go on to say the number of people taken into custody by the U.S. Border Patrol has reached the highest levels in the agency's 100-year history under Biden, averaging 2 million per year. And there's a lot of that attributed to the fact that there were dozens of things done under the Trump administration that this administration rolled back. And Vice President Harris is part of this administration and had a leading role, according to mainstream media, on handling the border.
Let's get real. Border crossings are down in the wake of President Biden's executive actions that he took after Congress failed to act.
So he could have taken action.
He wanted Congress to resolve that because that would have been more durable. But when Trump came in, talked Republicans out of their own bipartisan project because he didn't want the issue to get better. Remember, the worse things are at the border, the better things get for Donald Trump. So he has a vested interest in it remaining chaotic down there. I think this also helps to explain why he didn't exactly conclusively solve it when it was his turn. But I saw something else really important happening at the Republican National Convention on the border and the talk about immigration, which we all recognize is a problem, which is they tried to paint this narrative that if you live somewhere far from the border and immigration hasn't affected you personally, you need to think that immigration is a driver of crime. That was the real message. Immigration leads to crime.
Well, there are blue state governors and mayors who say every state is a border state now. That's Democrats.
Yeah, and now they're saying, but what the false message of the RNC was that this is leading to an increase in crime.
Well,
and I think it's really important that we talk about
have
crime.
Been very high profile about people. If they had not been in this country
cases,
illegally,
this is my
people
point,
would still
right?
be alive.
Trying to make people think that crime is up when crime is down under Joe Biden and crime was up under Donald Trump. Now, I don't know how often that gets reported on this network. So if you're watching this at home, do yourself a favor and look up the data.
Well, we invite that.
Great. So if you look this up at home, you will know that crime went down under Biden and crime went up under Trump.
Categories.
And I think the violent crime, for sure. So I think the really important thing to ask is, why would America want to go back to the higher crime that we experienced under Donald Trump?
Okay, but they also may want to ask why they'd want to go to millions fewer people coming illegal across the border, and every single person who's here and was involved with a crime, that's a life that didn't have to be lost. And I think that's the argument being made. We always appreciate you coming, and we hope you'll come back.
So again, masterclass performance by Pete Buttigieg, and you can see there that Shannon Bream, the host of Fox News Sunday, got a little defensive, right? And she's quite frankly, even though again clearly conservative, I think she tends to ask more softball questions to Republicans compared to Democrats. She is one of the more reasonable Fox News hosts. But even she's getting defensive there, too. And Pete is right to push her on this, that the Fox propaganda network does not report the fact, and it is a fact, which has been corroborated from FBI statistics, local law enforcement statistics, meta-analyses done by the likes of Jeff Asher, who's one of the leading criminologists in the country. Crime is down, particularly violent crime. Anyone who tells you otherwise is simply lying to you, which is what the Republicans do all the time. It's good that Pete is taking this posture. It really is. The fact of the matter is that I'm not sure how effective it is for Democrats to always give the benefit of the doubt to bad faith questions and to bad faith dishonest framing from centrists and moderates and people like the reporters on the Fox propaganda network. I think it's good to, not just be completely rude or anything, but certainly interrupt, certainly reject bad faith talking points and bad faith framing and say, no, crime is down. If you say it's up, you're wrong. I don't know if you report it to your viewers, but in fact, it is down. You should look it up. And to reject even the insinuations. You see how she tried to sanitize Trump's role in sabotaging the bipartisan border bill that was authored by James Lankford, one of, if not the most conservative member of the United States Senate with respect to the border. We have confirmation. We played it on this channel multiple times. You have people like Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell publicly admitting that it was because Donald Trump didn't want to do anything with respect to the border that they ultimately voted against it, because he did want to use it as a political wedge issue. It's an irrefutable fact. And she, of course, has no answer for it. So she tries to hedge and she tries to say, well, there were other reasons as well. Well, no doubt there were Republicans who were upset or not totally satisfied with the result of the bipartisan border bill. That's what happens in divided government. When Republicans are not in power, they have to make compromises. You don't get everything you want. You're not entitled to be the tail that wags the dogs. You get some things, Republicans, and then you have to give other things to Democrats. That's just how it works. And it's so funny to see these Fox hosts really struggle with that. But yeah, well, some Republicans, they didn't get everything they wanted. Duh. Of course they didn't. But they were still willing to vote along with the bill, which is why Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham, for example, backed the bill religiously until Donald Trump said, no, I want to use it as a wedge issue. So I love the fact that, again, be it on, correcting the narrative with respect to abortion rights, correcting the narrative with respect to the bipartisan border bill, correcting the narrative with respect to crime. Pete Buttigieg is a fantastic surrogate, and he manages to walk that line such that he's invited back on Fox. For some reason, they're gluttons for punishment. It's not always. He doesn't appear like every week or anything. And I imagine he has to be very careful, because if he humiliates them too much, they may not want to invite him back on again. But this posture, this combination of fact and rhetoric, to me, is enormously effective. Let me know what you think in the comments.